all a few questions. Show of hands.
Who here has ever been on a really cool vacation in another country? Awesome. Now, who here has spent time in another country other than a vacation? Wow, lots of hands. All right, last question. Who here has ever lived in another country? Not just for a week, not just for maybe a year, for a while. Significantly fewer hands. Now, those of you who did raise your hands, I can empathize because I lived in other countries my entire life. I spoke the language, I had friends, family, a life, and it was home. But one day, my entire reality, everything I had ever known, changed like that. So let's talk a bit about my experience abroad to start with. The first time my family moved abroad, I was only 2 years old. We moved to Bahrain. Now, for those of you who don't know, Bahrain is a very small desert country in the Middle East. We lived there for about 2.5 years. My mother homeschooled my brother and we had lots of friends. It's a really cool place, and we felt very, very at home there. Even though we didn't live there for very long, it felt very familiar to us because we were so young that this was pretty much our first experience in the world that we remember. Then, when I was 5, we moved to Germany. Now, Germany is a whole different game than Bahrain, but in a way, it was very similar. In Germany, we had lots of friends, we had lots of people who felt like family. My brother and I went to a lovely school. We lived like locals because we were outside of the military, and we just felt so at home here. Especially since we spent, my brother and I, the majority of our lives here. Everything was great, and we were very happy. Until one day, in March of 2015, we got a phone call. And that phone call said that we had 3 months to pack up our entire lives and move to the one place in the whole world that was most unfamiliar to us. America. Now, some of you may be thinking, wait a minute. How is this the most unfamiliar place in the world to them? All these pictures look very familiar to me. Well, think about it. My brother and I were abroad from such a young age that we had very little exposure to American culture and what America was like. So all of this was incredibly foreign to us. At first, I was shocked. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't speak, I couldn't move, I couldn't think. I couldn't even wrap my head around the fact that my entire reality was going to change forever. I had moved before. I knew the drill. You leave behind a house, friends, and a comfortable situation. But this was not your typical move. Now, I'd like to talk to you about something that I like to call the phases of adjusting to a new situation. Phase 1, confidence. You feel good. The situation hasn't come yet, but you just know you're going to be fine. Now, I like to think of adjusting to a new situation as like your first day at a new school. So this point in time would be, first day of school is a couple weeks away, and you've seen the pictures, you maybe even gone and visited the school, everything looks great and you're excited. Phase 2, uncertainty. You have arrived at your new situation and you're not quite sure how you feel about it yet. Maybe your first couple minutes of your new school, you don't have enough exposure to know if you like it or not. Phase 3, panic. What did I get myself into? I could be back in my old situation right now. Probably the point in your school day where you start realizing, wait, I don't know anybody. I don't know where to go. What time is it? What schedule do I have? What period? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Phase 4, adjustment. You start seeing both the pros and cons of your new situation and begin to come to terms with them. And finally, phase 5, closure. You've accepted the situation as your new life and you move on. Now, the phases of adjustment are part of a bigger concept that I like to call the big change. The big change is something that we all experience in our lifetime. It's one event that changes either you or your path in life forever. Now, naturally, the big change is different for everyone. As you might have seen earlier with Avery Epstein's talk, maybe the big change for her was losing her grandmother. For me, it was our move to America. But even though this is different for everybody, there is one thing besides adjusting to a new situation that we all go through, and that is grief. Now, naturally, this will take different forms depending on what the big change is for you. So if you lose a loved one or someone really close to you, naturally you'll feel traditional grief. But maybe you could grieve your old life, or you could grieve what you used to know to be true. So let's talk about grief a little bit by talking about the stages of grief. Stage 1, denial. This can't be happening. I refuse to accept it. I refuse to accept that my life has changed forever. Phase 2, anger. No, why did the universe have to do this to me? Why does fate hate me so? Why does everything have to change? Stage 3, bargaining. Now, I realize that some of you may be a little confused about this, but think about it. Let's say you used to live in Washington, and now you moved to Florida, and that's where you live now. Maybe, in this case, bargaining for you could be you ask your mom if you can go spend a week with your friends back in Washington, and maybe you can ask if you can go to your old school for a couple days. You try to spend as much time in your old situation as possible because it's still tough to accept. Phase 4, depression. Why did things have to change? Why does this have to suck so much? Why did everything that used to be have to be no more? I was happy. Why did this have to happen? And finally, stage 5, acceptance. Now, if one of you asked me to put myself in the phases of adjustment or grief, I'm not sure I'd know where to put myself. I'd probably be between phase 4 and phase 5, and stage 4 and stage 5, because I am not depressed or sad in my new life, and I don't know if I'll ever accept it fully, but I know that I am happy and I am all right, and I am surrounded by people who love me and support me, and that's what's important. So if you feel like this, if you are going through the big change and this is where you're at, or you know someone who's close to you who is also going through this, there are lots of things you can do to help. If you are going through the big change, don't alienate yourself. Don't let yourself be alone. And if you know someone going through the big change, don't let them push you away. Stay close to them. Spend time with them. Make sure that they know that they are loved, supported, and they are okay. One way I like to deal with it is swimming, cooking, crafting, my hobbies, or spending time with friends. That makes me feel good about my new life. So remember, when you go through the big change, whether you've experienced already or you know it's coming, remember, you have friends, you have family. You are always surrounded by people who love you and people who support you and people who always will be there for you. So I'd like you to leave my talk today knowing you are loved, you are cherished, and most importantly, you are not alone.